I'm Susan Templeman, the member for Macquarie. Last Sunday we had the first bushfire of the season in Falconbridge in the Blue Mountains, and last night really bad storms swept across the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury. And what happens in those circumstances is the power goes down and people feel really vulnerable because they have no mobile reception. That means they have no way to communicate, and this happened last Sunday and it happened overnight. Now, the reason we don't have communication is because the mobile phone networks are so inadequate across the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury. I've raised this with the Minister for Communications. He says we should be grateful for what we've got. He says we've had a number of towers put into the electorate over the last the term of this government, but I'm going to give you some examples where my communities are so susceptible and vulnerable to bushfire. Mount Tomah was promised a tower in 2015 by the Minister. In 2019, quietly, the government decided to take that tower away and relocate it out into another electorate. Now, that tower is still, there is no tower in Mount Tomah. This is a community that was hit very hard by the bushfires last summer. They did it with no mobile communication, and it is only sheer luck that lives weren't lost because people couldn't communicate. In the McDonald Valley, St Albans, they were promised a tower under the Mobile Black Spot funding program in 2017. There's been 4 fire seasons since then, and there is still no mobile phone tower. Now, one of these towers was Telstra, one was Optus, so this is not just a problem with a single provider. This is the government's responsibility to make sure that when they fund telcos and support them to put in towers, that those towers are actually put in place, not to quietly agree to pull them out when it all gets a bit too hard. Both these places are examples of what's happening right across my electorate, and it is not good enough of this government to say, oh, you've had a whole bunch. We need full mobile coverage. One of the key things that happens with the NBN is when the power goes off, you lose all communication. So in my own home, when the power goes off, I have no mobile signal. We face bushfires harder, bigger, longer bushfires as we're going forward. We know we need proper communication, and yet this minister is unwilling to step up and take his responsibilities to provide us with mobile communication. One of the other consequences is that the crew for the RFS can't even find out whether they're needed because they require an app, and the app doesn't work if there's no mobile signal or no Wi-Fi because their NBN's gone down. People can't even upload the Fires Near Me app. So last Sunday in Falconbridge, you had people not able to see where the fire was, where it was moving. It's about time this government stepped up and did what the people of Macquarie deserve. The people in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury and every other bushfire-prone area deserve to have proper mobile communication.
When you were last here, you spoke about a lot of the houses in your electorate that were destroyed by bushfires. How's the rebuild coming along?
We lost around 40 homes in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury last summer. There has not been a completed rebuild of any of those homes. 1 or 2 have started rebuilding. Many are trying to get agreements signed and DAs done in order to meet the government's New Year's Eve deadline to be eligible for home builder, for the $25,000 payment for home builder. There is an enormous amount of pressure on people to try and make these decisions fast. This would have to be one of the slowest recoveries I've seen. I survived the 2013 bushfires in Winmalee, but my house did not. And by this time, in those fires, we were seeing significant more rebuild than we're seeing right now. The recovery was slow, the rebuild is slow. We're coming up to the first anniversaries. What's different in this anniversary is that it isn't just one single date. The fires hit different places at different times, and every week we're going to have another anniversary. That's a really triggering thing for people who've been through it. And for some people, their emotions are stretched very thin at the moment. I've been talking to a lot of the community around the Bells line of road, that's Bilpin, Mount Tomah, going up as far as Bell, Mount Victoria and Blackheath, which were the hardest hit areas. Tempers are fraying, people are finding they're more easily brought to tears. We have had one wonderful piece of good news, and that is that the very well-known Tutti Frutti Cafe on Bells line of road at Bilpin has its official reopening this weekend. It had a soft reopening last weekend, but it's officially reopening this weekend, and that will bring a smile to people's faces. But at the same time, you look at the family home next door that was lost, and there's no sign of rebuild yet, and they're hoping very much to be able to start that rebuild sometime next year.
Economic data due out today is probably going to show that the Australian economy started to rebound and that we're going to be coming out of this recession. What do you think about this?
What we're seeing in the Blue Mountains is still a big hole left by international tourism. Day trippers and weekenders can only do so much when an economy relies so strongly on international tourism. So I think we're going to see a very patchy recovery. For some areas there may well be good signs. For other areas, small businesses, especially tourism-based operators in my community, are hanging on by the skin of their fingers. They're literally clawing their way through to get through what they hope will be an okay lead up to Christmas and a decent summer. Keep in mind that in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury, we had no tourist summer last year. By this time last year, the tourism industry had shut down. So there's an extra layer in bushfire areas that the government can't ignore. It has to remember that people are dealing with COVID on the back of an appalling bushfire season that in the Blue Mountains was a $66 million hit just over those couple of months, and in the Hawkesbury was a $33 million hit. They were already starting behind the 8 ball when COVID took its toll. Can I just raise one more thing? The government seems to be hedging its bets a bit on an aerial firefighting fleet. The Royal Commission recommended that for bushfires there should be a nationally coordinated and funded aerial firefighting fleet. Now, Richmond RAF base in my electorate in the Hawkesbury was the place that had planes coming and going last summer. Not only was that enormously comforting for people who could see the very best things were being done, it is also the ideal base to have a national coordinated firefighting fleet. There's space there, there's a community that recognises the need for it because they live within and on the edge of a national park. So to see the Minister, last night I saw him make comments that indicated he may be shifting his mind, changing his mind on this issue. I'd really encourage Minister Littleproud to reconsider his refusal to consider a nationally coordinated fleet. It's not good enough to say let the states do it, and if they want us to do something we will. He needs to step up. He needs to say this is something we can do as a federal government that will help ease the burden of bushfire fighting on the states and would certainly make communities like mine in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury feel like there was something being done. From the last fires to this fire season, we've seen very little additional preparation. No one feels that we're in a significantly better position, and the only thing that makes us a little more relaxed is that we've had decent rain. But that can all change, and as summer goes on, anxieties are going to grow and grow. And when you've had your first bushfire of the season on a Sunday in November, when temperatures are up in the 40s, you know it's going to be a long summer. Thank you.
Thanks.